Hello, everyone, and welcome. Kelly here with Fun and Function. Welcome to today's webinar. We are so very thankful to have with us Dr. Kavitha Krishnan presenting the topic Families with a Sensory Child in Quarantine. Please continue to join us every Monday through Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time for informal webinars on a variety of topics, as well as 3 weekly webinars presented by Fun and Function's very own OT, Danielle Lake. I'd like to take just a moment to introduce our presenter today, Dr. Kavitha Krishnan. She is an occupational therapist with 24 years of extensive experience in pediatrics. She has guest lectured at University of Illinois Chicago and serves as an adjunct faculty at Winston-Salem State University. She has also collaborated in clinical research, presented a short course at the AOTA, and presented several poster presentations at the annual Occupational Therapy Summit of Scholars. She received her diploma in occupational therapy from Nanyang Polytechnic, I hope I said that correctly, in Singapore, and her bachelor's with honors from the University of Teesside in the UK. She completed her post-professional master's in health rehabilitation from University of Pittsburgh, and she completed her post-professional doctorate of occupational therapy at the University of Illinois Chicago. Her experience spans from working with infants and toddlers to children and adolescents. She is the owner of Healing Synergy LLC. She conducts workshops, online courses, and she is the author of the SI Solution, the definitive family guide to thriving during sensory integration dysfunction. Thank you, Dr. Krishnan, for joining us today. I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Kelly, for the introduction. My name is Dr. Kavitha Krishnan. As Kelly mentioned, I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. And the topic I picked today is families in quarantine with a child with sensory issues, because during my practice, I realized that this has been so different, the new normal that we experience right now. And there's been a shift in the routines. So our children that have had sensory issues, we are seeing a little bit more of a spike in some of the behaviors. So I just wanted to talk about that and what strategies we could use. So current couple of things that I want to go through are the objectives. What is sensory integration and sensory processing disorder? The impact of COVID-19 on families and children. What are the red flags you want to look out for to see if your child might have sensory issues? And then to have some quick and dirty sensory strategies to implement at home. So what exactly is sensory integration? The concept of sensory integration, or what we know as SI, was first introduced by Dr. Jean Ayers, who was a clinician, a mentor, author, and a researcher. And she was ahead of her time. The things that she noticed with the children, she knew there was something else that was different and not to go with what they commonly thought as behavioral issues. She had a good inkling and understanding, and she was the one who developed the theory, sensory integration, and it's defined as a neurological process that organizes sensations from one's body and from the environment to make it possible to use the body effectively within the environment. And sensory integration is now trademarked as ASI or AS sensory integration. So you're going to hear that a lot more. So principles used in ASI are principles and techniques that were developed by Dr. Jean Ayers. And so they have like a feasibility measure, and their treatment techniques have certain protocols that you have to follow in place. So I put this in here because you're going to hear more and more about ASI. So what exactly are the systems that are affected by sensory processing? So when you have sensations that are not coming in well, not being processed well, there are two things that can happen. You can be hyper-responsive or hypo-responsive. And we have 8 sensory systems that we look at. With the tactile system, you're looking at light touch, firm touch, vibration, temperature difference, and pain perceptions. So things that you might notice with your children are like they might not like tags in clothes, seams in the socks, um, getting hugs unless they give you a hug. They may not be even aware of pain. So I've had kids who may have had a fracture, a, you know, a eardrum that's broken that mom didn't know till, she saw pus coming out of it. Temperature differences just with bath water temperature, it has to be exactly the same. Otherwise, the child is really unhappy. With proprioception, sensations from receptors in your joints and muscles. What you may notice here is a child that uses more force that's needed or less force that's needed. So in the case of using more force, it'll be like giving a high five with a really high thud, or turning a doorknob like almost they're going to break it, or even drawers. I've had families who come in and told me, oh my God, he's just broken the doorknob again, or the knobs on the drawers because he's using more force. On the opposite end would be writing on paper, and it's so light that you can't actually see the prints on the paper. With the vestibular system, you're looking at balance, spatial orientation, and coordination. Here you might see kids who might be happy to go up, but terrified to come down. They might be scared of being on the swing or how quickly you go on the swing. And any of the playground equipments might scare them. With the vestibular system, you might also find that some of the kids who are clumsy, where there might be nothing on the ground, and sometimes parents tell you there's nothing absolutely on the ground, but he's tripping and falling, right? So the motor planning is not there, and spatial awareness has been affected for these kids. With the auditory system, you're looking at perception and processing of sounds, loud sounds, missing sounds, and filtering off different sounds. So for instance, we have seen kids, when their name is called, when you call your child, he doesn't look like he's responding to you, especially when the TV or the radio is on or other kids are around. They can't actually filter off the sound. So they look like they're not paying attention, and parents go like, I have to, call him louder before he'll respond to me. But really what's happening is they can't filter the background from the foreground, so they can't actually hear you. The analogy I always use is like being in a carnival, right? There's so many different sounds around them, they can't filter that. We also have seen lots of kids who get, upset with blenders, a vacuum, a car going by, or a truck going by, or a honking, and they have their hands on their ears immediately, right? So, or we also see a lot of kids who are afraid of hand dryers, right, in the bathroom, or the automatic flush. That really scares them because they cannot anticipate when that's going to be happening. So these kids, it's really stressful going in the environment. What we consider like normal environment, for them it's really stressful because they don't know when to anticipate certain sounds. And the problem with this is when it gets too loud, and their sympathetic or their flight or fright system kicks in, they dart, they just run, because what they're trying to do is actually run away from the sound, right? Because it's too much for them. Next, you're looking at taste and smells. So for example, a child might be a picky eater. He may have sensory aversion to different types of foods, and so might only limit to a few foods like fries or nuggets. That seems to be the common theme. Or they might be overstuffing their mouth, because they can't actually sense that. So unless it's like their mouth is really packed, then the receptors fire and they go like, oh, I've got enough food in here, and then they swallow. Next is to perceive and interpret odors or smells. So these children are very sensitive to smells, such as like shower gels, or they might seek certain smells. So as therapists, when we go in, usually we don't want to wear too much. We don't want to wear cologne or perfume because we don't know if that's going to be a little too much for the kids, right? And so for that sake, even like you have detergents, shower gels, shampoos that are pretty neutral. And so you don't have a certain smell that can affect the child or be too aversive to their sensory system. One story I remember is working with a child where he was fine in school. He came back and mom was going like, I don't know why, but he is so upset when he gets into class. He goes almost ballistic. Long story is during the holidays, the school decided to paint the classroom. I think people forgot about it because everything else was kept normal. And so he had the same table, the same seat, the same teacher that came in. And then I think it was the assistant teacher who said, oh, you know what? this went on for about a week before they kind of detected what was the change. They said they painted the wall. And that was early part of the school holidays, but yet he could detect it, and it was just too much for his system. Next is visual system, how you perceive and interpret information. So children might squint when they're outside. They might prefer working in a dim environment. Sometimes you put overlays on books so that it's easier for them to read. I always tell parents, like, okay, for example, you might like a yellow highlighter versus somebody else with a green or a blue. And so just like that, we just need to know what the wavelength is, and so that it's easier for them to read from the print from the paper. So white tends to be a little bit glaring for some of these kids, so maybe a yellow or beige background might be easier, but you got to play around with your child to find out what works best. Interoception is how you perceive body sensations, what's inside the body. So for some of these kids, they don't feel hungry, right? They seem unaware that they're hungry. Some of these kids are not aware when they need to use the bathroom. So if they need to pee or poop, that's not happening, right? Because they don't actually feel it. And so accidents happen, and that kind of also affects toilet training. And I tell parents that, you can't sometimes have a set time frame for these kids, because we are training them, but if they can't feel it, that's going to be difficult. And usually you'll see them, as the sessions go on with treatment, you'll start seeing them wiggle or get uncomfortable in their diaper when it's wet. And I'm like, this is great. They're beginning to sense and feel. And sometimes there might be accidents that happen because the rhythm and timing is not in place. So by the time they get to the bathroom, an accident's already happened. But interoception is already getting processed. So again, those are the 8 sensory systems. And the SI theory describes it as a brain-behavior relationship to explain the deficits in interpreting sensations from the body and the environment. Well, when Ayers came up with this theory, her primary objective was developing the theory to explain the underlying cause of the problem to determine what would be the optimal mode of intervention. So like I went through the 8 sensory systems, if we can kind of nail it down to, these are the sensory systems that are affecting, which systems are hyper or hypo responsive. And I want you to remember, some kids can have both hyper and hypo responsive. And so what kind of treatments can we tailor, and is individually tailored for these kids. Sensory processing terminology is another terminology you hear quite often. It is defined as the ability of the central nervous system to assimilate, process, and organize appropriate responses to the sensory information that's coming in. So we want to have the arousal, regulation, and attention and alertness at an optimal level for us to pay attention to. So you need to have a state of optimal arousal to pay attention and engage in an activity. For example, if we've all been stuck at home right now, so we had at home and we just seated and just engaged in work on a computer or something. After a while, you need to get up, you need to move around, you need to get a cup of water, a coffee, take a jog, come back. But that's to keep that arousal system at an optimal level so that you can pay attention to the work that you need to do. The execution of behavior or movement is being able to motor plan and carry out a movement or behavioral response that is appropriate. Next is emotional regulation, being in control of one's emotional state, especially in a challenging situation. I want to highlight challenging situation. And so for the child or the person to know that I do not want to react immediately, what are the strategies to help the system kind of take control. So there's a lot of breathing techniques to calm that system down so that you can think better before you perform. And a lot of our kids get into trouble because they kind of react immediately to a situation. But as therapy goes on, as you provide sensory integration, as sensory integration treatment, you start seeing while the other sensory systems that get better, emotional regulation also gets better. But you also need to tell the child or show the child strategies on what they need to do, right? Just telling them, no, this is wrong, doesn't help, but because you need to show them, okay, this is probably what we should do. This would be a better approach of what we need to do. Then you have communication and interaction. Many of our kids with sensory problems, we know that socialization is difficult because they can't socialize appropriately or express their needs appropriately. So that's another huge component. A lot of parents, many of the parents that I see, that's one of the main concerns that they have for socializing and for their children to make friends. Rhythm and timing is so essential. We all have it um, intrinsically. We don't realize it, but in communication, and some people, it's such an easy flow with the communication. That's rhythm and timing as well, with the flow of the words and how we engage with the other person. Rhythm and timing can also be seen like playing a game, for instance, like baseball. Rhythm and timing, seeing the ball that's coming towards you and then timing it appropriately and hitting the ball. So there's a coordination of sound and vibration with movement, and this is linked with emotional and intellectual development as well. There are three areas that we look at for sensory integration. The first one is learning is dependent on the ability to take in and process sensation from movement and environment, to use it to plan and organize behavior. And that's why in SI clinics and so forth, or when you have SI treatment, we want the kids to move. We want the kids to participate actively, right? Because they can use and process that information to plan and organize their behavior. The next is individuals who have decreased ability to process sensations may also have difficulty in producing appropriate actions, which may result in interfering with the learning and behavior, because if they're not receiving the information that's coming in, they can't process the information to produce the appropriate response. They require enhanced sensations as part of meaningful activity to have adaptive interaction, improve the ability to process sensations, which enhance learning and behavior. So you give them a lot of different kinds of opportunity, different sensations, so that what builds up is an adaptive interaction. That way it builds up not just the behavior, but also learning, the learning repertoire. Next is, I love this picture because it really describes what's happening in the brain for some of these kids. So the traffic jam in the brain is when sensory information is tied in traffic such that some parts of the brain did not get the sensory information required to get the job done. So there's always this delayed response, or they look confused with you, like, what are you asking for? And if that is happening, then the behavioral response, the output, is not in sync, right? So they cannot actually produce the appropriate or expected behavior when there's a whole traffic jam going on in the brain. And it affects the brain's ability to process, organize the flow of information in a manner that gives good, precise information for the child or the world around the child. So you might have a child who's actually playing, say, baseball, right, or soccer, and they're missing they're missing, like, hitting the ball, or they're not paying attention. The coach is calling them, they're not actually attending because there's so much sensory inputs and there's a little traffic jam going on there, so they can't actually give you the right output or the behavioral response. So what exactly is adaptive response? For you to get adaptive response, you need to have just the right challenge. You need to give the child it shouldn't be less than what the child is capable of doing. So you kind of up the ante a little bit to give him, just challenging him just right. As soon as he gets to that level, you can push it up to the next level. If the activity is too hard for them, the two things can happen. They look bored and they move away, or they get angry because they can't process it. So you may want to kind of pull it down or grade it down a little bit so that it's just right for the child. And you want to have the child be able to feel successful, that they've accomplished it. And with adaptive response, as you look at the child during treatment, you're going to see that as that adaptive response gets better, what was challenging before start getting a little bit easier. And children in general, when they get better at something, they want to up the ante a little bit. And that's why you might buy them a game, and after a while they don't play with it, while they've been playing with it for 2 weeks straight, because now I'm really good at it. What's next? They're looking for the next challenge. Goal-directed response to sensory experiences is good. The child has to be an active participant. They have to be moving around, because when they actively explore the environment or they actively engaged, neuroplasticity is taking place, right? So they're actively engaging, they're having this experience, and that gets processed in the brain. So it helps the brain to develop and organize itself. Play is the occupation of a child, and it's a great platform for adaptive response that makes sensory integration happen. Many parents I speak to will tell me, like, oh no, they went for OT and they were just playing. Yes, play is the mode for these children. So they are engaging in sensory integration treatment, or they're engaging in the OT treatment without even realizing they're actually working. So that's actually so cool for the child because it's not work anymore. They're just playing and they're enjoying themselves as they improve. With the SI dysfunction is when the end product is inefficient and irregular sensory processing of the brain. So, for instance, like, you're calling a child, he's not responding, or they get really angry really quickly, or there might be a meltdown because they couldn't understand what was happening, or it's too much for them. So that's when you have an SI dysfunction. The function is dependent on the development and the integration in the brain itself. So you're waiting for that. So you have the adaptive response. You're providing them the opportunity with the just right challenges for them to work, process it, and get the processing in a good place. Anxiety and sensory issues. With sensory processing, with SI dysfunction, especially when they're over-responsive, or sensory over-responsive, it is connected with anxiety. So I did actually do an evaluation very recently when mom was saying, I think he's having anxiety and I don't know if it's sensory processing issues that's related to it. And I said, it really is connected because the limbic system is connected. And so, for example, if I know something I don't like is on the table, I'm going to touch it, I'm going to get anxious about it, right? So, but for them, that goes, their limbic system fires off, their flight or fright response. And what you're going to see is their heart rate goes up, breathing goes up, the muscles tense, and sometimes it can affect even eating and sleep patterns. So there is a lot of research available right now that shows that there is a connection between sensory sensitivity and generalized anxiety. Sensory defensiveness, that is a child who has sensory over responsive or sensory sensitive, if left unattended, there's a tendency in adults having anxiety and depression later on. There's also been a positive relationship found between anxiety and sensory defensiveness, and sensory over-responsiveness, sensory over-responsivity in school period is a risk factor for anxiety disorders as well for the children. So you can see how it's kind of closely connected with these kids. This is really important for us to pay attention to because with COVID-19, what have we come to know? So we know that since April 8th, 2020, schools have been closed in about 188 countries. That's UNESCO's finding. And a study in China found there was an increase in depression and anxiety in at least 16 to 28% of children who were screened. And the study found that in 1,099 children confined in their homes for 33.7 days, they found 18.9% of school-age children reported anxiety, 22.6% reported depressive symptoms, and this was related to the reduction of outdoor activities and social interactions that was associated with increase in the child's depressive symptoms. So again, I want you to think about your own kids and what that means for them, because we have all this is like a social experiment, we have all collectively been confined to our homes for a good reason so that we don't spread the disease. But what does that mean, right? And being held in the homes, if your child already had anxiety, it might be kicking it up a little bit more. So children with sensory processing issues who already have sensory sensitivities are now probably more prone to having familiar routines disrupted because, with COVID, what happened was their whole world kind of changed. They don't have a school routine. Parents going to work at a certain time has been affected. And now in their homes, they probably have their brother and all their siblings together as well. So the routine at home has changed. This can cause the child to be anxious, depressed. Some of them can be really frustrated. And you might actually be seeing more frequent meltdowns now with the children as well. I want you to appreciate the fact that even with us being confined at home, it can be like almost cabin fever for some of us. So now Again, thinking of a child with sensory processing issues and maybe having limitations of understanding that, all the areas that I just talked about might kick it up a little notch higher. Anxiety can result in both physical and emotional symptoms. So you might find that your child is now more clingy, might cry more. They might actually talk about missing school and friends. And that probably is because they're missing that routine, something that was really familiar to them. And friends, right? That's the place that they might have been socializing or having, interactions with a bunch of friends. And now they don't have that. What you would be seeing is changes in behavior. Sleep might get disrupted. Eating, some kids don't want to eat as much. Or there might be mood changes that you're going to be seeing with these kids as well. Some of the signs of possible sensory challenges are: does your child cover their ears? Does your child seem like they're not hearing you? Does your child seem always distracted in the house? Is your child more clingy right now? Are they avoiding schoolwork more than before? I want to highlight this because our parents and caregivers have also become teachers now with the distance learning, right? And so now not only do you have to do your own work and look after the child, you also have become teachers. So we appreciate what you have to be doing because you're wearing many different hats. And I've heard, I bring this up is because I've heard from a couple of parents going like they are refusing to do schoolwork. They don't want to do it. If I ask them to do it, they go no. They run around the room saying no, we're not going to do it. I've tried every different token prize that they can get. They don't want to do it. And I said, you know what, each child is a little different, but we want to stop and see what might be happening. A lot of screen time might be difficult on the eyes for this child, right? Or we might have to adapt the environment in which the child is sitting. So the child might have to sit on a therapy ball or those wobbly cushions. Maybe even having a compression vest, because it might be hard to watch and engage a, a school activity that's going on for this child. So again, I've come to hear that this is a problem, but we can work around it. So don't think you're alone with it. It is just with sensory processing, sometimes it gets really difficult for them to engage. And how long can a child sit down to pay attention? Attention rates are about 10 to 15 minutes at a time. Is your child more argumentative right now? Or is your child more quiet and prefers to be alone more often now, right? More than before. Does your child have more frequent meltdowns? Does your child seem to shut down more often now as well? So these are some of the signs that you want to pay attention to. Strategies that you can use are set up a routine, and if possible with the child, especially a child who can engage with you and participate, you can actually set up a routine with them. The reason I say this is that collaboration is really good because there's also this buy-in, because they worked with you. These are for children who can work with you. Next is sensory diet. These are sensory activities that are designed to meet your child's sensory needs. So usually in a therapy clinic, or if you have an occupational therapist, they would have got you to do the sensory profile, and with that they'll tell you which areas are affected, and based on that they actually create a sensory diet for you. So sensory activities that are meeting or tailoring to meet the child's need. With sensory activities, you definitely want to have lots of heavy work activities, and we'll go through that in the slides that follow. Heavy work activities will help to ground and organize your child better. Social stories are really good. I've seen not only for children with autism, but some of the children with sensory over-responsiveness, because they get anxious so quickly. Sometimes social stories help them see the sequence of what is going to be happening and what to expect, and that makes it a lot easier for them. And I don't want to forget to say this to you: when you are giving instructions, remember to give time between the instructions. So you might give the child maybe a 3-step instruction, but you start off with the first step and stop. Give that child some time to process that before you go on with the second and third. And sometimes you may have to just break it down to 1-step instruction and give the child some time to process it. Virtual play dates are great so that they can now socialize with other kids. They can see like, oh, they're friends, or making friends with other kids as well. We have started to do that in Healing Synergy, where we've started doing virtual play dates, and they're not just limited to children with special needs. It's for any child who wants to join in within the age range. We also do Video modeling has also some really good research so that the kids will know exactly what they do. So you get a video, again, examples are provided later on. A video is done to show the child exactly what to expect. And the reason why video modeling is really good because kids with autism see pictures better than like hearing words. So they actually see the sequence of what's happening and it's flowing for them, so they know what to expect. And when you're giving like lessons as well for these students, for these kids, this is really helpful for them to actually see what's happening and then kind of zoning in on the activity itself without all the distractors, so that they get to see exactly what needs to be done and what the instructions are, and they can follow that a little bit easier. So this is one of the routines I had one of my kids do. This is like an after-school program for her. She had after school, then therapy time, relaxation time, homework, dinner, bathroom time, reading time, and then bedtime. So to her, this was a child with autism. To her, she knew what to expect. So the anxiety was brought down. She knew sometimes, she came to the age where she would negotiate what she wanted, but at least she knew what was expected of her. It didn't just spring up on her. So she could see it and she understood it. And this child was nonverbal. And that actually worked out really well. Also, this was a placemat. This can used in the schools. Okay, this is where the plate is kept, the drink, I want more. What exactly do you want more? Instead of getting upset, you can tell me, use a picture, or she can press the dynamo, this this computer thing on the side where she can actually tell you, the communication device, to tell you what she wanted. Or she was all done, or if she needed more help. This I took from my book. This is another sensory schedule that you can have, and some of the sensory activities that are next to it. So for example, you wake up at a certain time. You can have alarm clocks that gradually light up with music, because some kids don't get up in the best of forms, right? Some get really upset and angry when they get up, or some take a long time before they wake up. So you have alarm clocks that gradually light up, and there's music that starts off and then gets a little bit louder. You also have some like drum or rhythmical music to wake the system up. I also tell parents to give deep pressure input using the ball rolled over the legs and arms, and then the sensory strategies written on the side and the emotions on the side. Using electric toothbrush is really good because it wakes up the mouth. Brush till the alarm goes off so they know how long they need to do it, because time is abstract to them. So you tell them you need to brush for like 3 more minutes or 3 minutes, and they go like, I don't know, 3 minutes is infinity to me. I don't know what it is. But if you have your phone there to see how long it's going for, that gives them an endpoint as well. So that makes it easier for them. Dressing to tell them what they can wear. Put on your underwear, your shirt, your pants. So showing them the schedule for breakfast, providing them munch and crunchy foods. For some of these kids are really good to wake up the mouth. So apples, toast, pretzels. You can drink from a cup with a straw or a bottle with a sports water bottle spout, because you have to work the muscles around your mouth. And then as they're going to school, I've had to have some of the kids, the transition from home to school at that time was difficult for them, and they had to listen to some calming music or different kinds of programs if you are already working with an OT, like therapeutic listening or the other kinds of protocols that you're using. So at home, you might want to do this as well, but we can kind of alter that to suit the needs of your child. Yoga and meditation. So one thing we know is when anxiety kicks in, breathing goes haywire. When the child is getting kind of dysregulated, we know that's also really difficult for them. And they know it's happening. For some of them, they know it's happening, but what do we do, right? So we don't want to start in the middle of the day. I usually tell parents, you know what, let's do it in the beginning of the day, because we are setting the stage for calmness, right? It is a warm up to the system. So you can do yoga. So you can do, and this is, if you click on those links, they bring you to the different links. So like this one is to kids yoga stories. So if you click on the yoga and stories, it brings you to that link. And they've got a couple of free resources there. So a couple of the animal poses that you can be using. So these are different strategies that you can use. And breathing is key. So getting them to breathe, take in and blow out is really good, is useful. But sometimes it's hard for kids to actually do that. They don't really understand that. right? So blowing bubbles sometimes is really good because they have to blow hard enough to get the bubbles being blown. So going back to this, with yoga, I always ask to start the day, if you can, with yoga activities or heavy work activities like this, and you have pictures and the kids think it's really fun. You can also find YouTube animal walk, or those yoga poses. You can actually put it up and say, okay, you know what, today we're going to do some yoga poses, and this is what we're going to do. You and I are going to be doing this. Transcendental meditation, mindfulness has also been found to be really useful, and you can get these kids to really calm down, get the breath down, and start breathing. But once you get them trained in this, they understand how to use it because they are actively using it, and they have the sensation and feeling of how that feels. Again, those, if you click those links, they'll bring you to the websites. Now, for the sensory diet activities that we talked about, we're going to talk about deep pressure and touch, but I want to caution you that do not force your child to touch items that he or she is not comfortable with. For example, I have here kinetic sand, and I've had kids where I'll put it there, put like a fun toy that they like in there, but I don't force them. They can look at it and they can touch and pull it off. I've had one kid who will do this and go like, get really upset because it's on his fingers, and we've taught him to like, let's dust it off. And so now he's learned to do that. And I love kinetic sand because you can see that when they play with it, after a while, they'll come back. But you give them that opportunity. It's out there for them to play with. Vibrating pens, balls, stuffed toys are very good. Vibrating toothbrush is good. I would be very cautious when a child has seizures, though. I will definitely check to see if they can use the vibrating toothbrush. Play in the sandbox. You can put tons of like different fun items in there for them to pick up their toys, scooping, and they have the sand in there, but you can teach them to rub it off. It's okay, it's fine. So teaching them that tolerance and then building up the sensory processing ability using play items like that is great. A log rolling is good. I have this as well. This is great. You know, it gives you that deep pressure, so it just rolls, and it's nice deep pressure that you get. And I usually tell parents to use that at the start of the day and at night just before they go to sleep as well. Burrito baby, so you're wrapping your little kiddo in a blanket. Water play or swimming. Swimming is so great if you can do that. Hand fidgets are great. Finger painting, glitter glue, joint compressions, massage if you can give them that. Bean bags are great. Sensory bins where you have rice and beans or water beads so that the child can go in and play with those items. Great Play-Doh is great, and putting stuff in the Play-Doh for them to pick out. Therapy is great too, where you can put the different items in it. That's a little picture on the side. My kids used to love that because they have to pick out the little items from there. So you're also working on fine motor control and fine motor development. Weighted blanket, lap pad. I have a compression vest with me. This is a compression vest. The kids use that. It's nice deep pressure that they have and helps with calming that system for them. Sandwich between pillows, a yoga ball rolled from feet to the back. So if the child's lying down, this is from the feet going up to the head and back. Play with shaving cream, but if your child tends to mouth a lot of items, then I would use whipped cream, right? Because if they put it in the mouth, that's fine. Helping with laundry, putting clothes in the dryer, taking them out, wiping the table, pushing chairs back under the table. Those are all heavy work activities which you can use at home. Next, with vestibular and proprioceptive movement, you can do the animal walks like we talked about, dancing, freestanding dancing, yoga, the wheelbarrow, love the wheelbarrow, right? And if your child can't actually hold their hands up and walk, you can actually have a ball under and with your hands down so that it helps them. That's the modified version of it. Wall push-ups, floor push-ups, playground slides are great because again, the intensity of coming down the slide, swinging in a blanket. So you can have, just take a blanket out, child is in the middle and you can swing them. Monkey paws are great for coordination and amount of proprioceptive input that they need. Bouncing on a yoga ball. When I talk about bouncing, I want to let you know that if a child is over responsive, you want to give rhythmical bouncing. And if the child has low arousal, hypo-responsive, you want to give arrhythmal bouncing. Okay, so you can do fast and slow movements to just wake that system up. Riding a bike or a scooter, rocking chair, using the rocking chair, again, you can move rhythmically and then arrhythmically with the child. Rocking horse is great. Rocking horse is great as well because you have to motor plan and get on top of the horse, and they have to, move themselves back and forth. Going through the tunnel, and I know if you don't have a tunnel, that's fine. If you have those big boxes, they can go through it, and they can get to color, they can get to paint it, so you can get really creative with what you want to do with the box. Walking, running, skipping, so you can do lots of fun things. If you have a sidewalk, you can do a hopscotch. You can do different sensory parts for the child to hop, a jump, skip if you need to, but that's giving a lot of different sensory inputs, vestibular input and probe input. A weighted ball, pushing a weighted cart, so you can have a cart and then you can put like maybe books or something in the cart for them to push, right? So that gives them the weight, that gives them a sense of where they are. It's very grounding of where they are in space. This is a little bit of a weighted ball to give them pressure of feeling the ball so you can throw and catch. And then after that, what I'll do is kind of reduce the weight to a normal ball like this. So this is, I think, like a half-pound ball with weight. It's got some weight to it. I don't know if you can see that it's got some weight to it, and then you can move it to this. So those are the kids who are throwing. The trajectile is not really good because they can't really feel. These are the kids that use more force than they need, and so that's giving nice proprioceptive feedback in their hand. Therabands at the foot. So you see the little child below where they need to move, but they can just have that feedback at the feet and keep their arousal system up. Next is sounds. For sounds, the sensory diodes are noise canceling headphones. There's some very cute ones, especially the kids who dart or run. If you're going out to prepare them for it, say this is your headphones. Sometimes they don't want to wear it all the time. It's understandable. We don't want to use the headphones all the time, but let them know where to go get it. So if you have like a backpack, you can put it in the backpack so the child knows I'm going out, but I have access to it. And some children will tell you, they will tell you immediately, I need that. Or they need to know where to have access to it. So even at home, have a designated spot in the house where the child goes to and knows he can get all the items that they need. Like headphones is one, or they need like different sensory balls, the kinetic sand or the sand, the rice and beans. They know exactly where to go to get it. You want to have rhythmical music to calm that system down and arrhythmical music to wake the system up. Nature music is really good in calming that system down. Drum medicine has some nice frequencies to it, and it's very rhythmical, so it wakes the body up for you. Not in a bad way, it's actually really good. It's very rhythmical. If you listen to it, it's got rhythmical music and arrhythmical, and it's got nature sounds. So I have seen kids who actually listen to drum medicine and then they'll hear the bird chirping or the waterfall, and they will actually turn to look at it. So that's actually opening up the field around them, the discrimination for them. Having white noise sometimes is easier for kids to go to sleep, having musical instruments, and also having a safe space where a child knows where they can retreat. Usually in the safe space, I ask parents to, have cushions, things that they like, comforting for them. They can have that, a little fort where they can go under, and that's the space. And they learn that if things are too overwhelming for them, they can go in there, and that's their safe haven for them to re-regulate. And so we're teaching them how to self-manage as well. With vision, it's low or dim light, colored overlays that you can use. So this is a child on the top right who's actually at the dentist. He has a compression vest. He has, glasses on because the light is too bright for him. Lava lamps are really calming as they look at it. Blue and green colors are soothing wall colors. Sunglasses when going outside, or in this case where the child is at the dentist. Visors or wearing a hat so that shades it off for them. Looking at an aquarium or fish tank is great. Something that you can have in the home, or goldfish bowl. Overlays on the fluorescent lamps. So one thing about fluorescent lamps, it flickers, we don't see it, but that gets a little overwhelming, especially for children who are on the spectrum. because they kind of detect it. So we ask that you usually use natural lights where possible. But if you do have fluorescent lamps, there are overlays like blue overlays, and you'll see that in schools as well. And that's the reason for that. Possible sensory diet activities. I have a whole bunch of them here. You have chewies that are ones with different textures and flavors, so you can actually hang them. So different types that you have here. Different chewies that they can actually wear. It strengthens the mouth. They also have textures on the side for them. These are different textures. I don't know if you can see the nodules, and then it's straight around here. This is what you can put on a pencil. And so they're at school or they're doing their work and they can still chew on it. It gives them that feedback. You have different scents for aromatherapy. You want to be a little bit careful with that. I know lavender is safe for you to use. You can also use sniff sticks to see which aroma your child likes. Blowing bubbles is really good for the child. You can also blow bubbles in a glass of water or a bowl for them to see that. Waking up citrusy water, waking up their sensory system. So anything like a lemon juice or lemonade will wake that system up for them. A sports water bottle, because they have to suck through with a little bit more of resistance. Again, it's hard work, but the mouth is very organizing. So the chewing, the suck, swallow, breathe is very good in organizing the system. So you have different tastes for them to wake up the system. You can have sweet, sour, salty, spicy. Add different flavors to wake for a child, especially who's under aroused. You might want to play with all these different flavors to wake up the mouth. Chewing gum is good. And some of these kids, they don't just chew one, they have to chew 2 or 3 pieces together. Again, that wakes up the mouth for them. Crunchy foods like pretzels, toast, baby carrots, celery, dipped in ranch, because now you're including 2 flavors to it, and ranch kind of wakes up the mouth as well. You can have cheese, those cheese sticks, green apples, pears would be really good to, again, wake up, because it has the crunch, you have to bite down on it, and you have the suck swallow. So that crunching for the proprioceptive input, that's really good for them. Want to just share with you the virtual play dates. What we in Healing Synergy have started doing is that we now have a playgroup schedule for kids. So things like handwriting, story time, yoga for kids, move and play, fitness, pretend play. Zones of regulation is to know where your mood is and what strategies you need to use to kind of calm down. Lego and dance party. So we've started doing that in our group. This is the next one, is autism focused intervention resources and modules. I would ask you to go to this site as well. Again, if you click on the link, Affirm, there's several resources for you, like how do you transition off screen time, because now you have the computer on, the TV on. What can we do to help to transition off for these kids? The National Museum of Natural History will also give you a nice virtual tour. They're different. There are about 9 different places that you can go. So every other day, you as a family can go on a trip together. So just trying to be imaginative and creative. So these are some of the things that you could do. And then you could use the kinetic sand to start building stuff. So expanding play that way as well. They can watch it, they can go through it, and then you say, can we draw or can we color? So you're working on handwriting, you're working on creativity, you're working on, let's use Play-Doh to create the animals that we saw. So again, you're expanding that play skill for them. Social stories are immensely useful for these kids, as I mentioned. And if you go to the Watson's Institute, they have a lot of templates already available and templates that you can use. So if, say, your husband's going to be, or you are going to be going to work soon, and a nanny has to be coming in, you can actually use some of the stories that they have there and put your name in, so that you can kind of tweak it to suit your household. So for example, here is Calming the Wiggles. They talk about the wiggles and what happens. We can do things to calm the system, show me to calm and relax. And below is a picture showing how they can do it as well. So again, go here. There's several templates available for you to use, and the resource is free. This is the other thing, because now I know with some of the kids, they don't use the mask at home, but when they go out, they're seeing people with masks. And so this is a social story. Again, there are many different social stories free for you to use as a resource, and seeing other people wearing masks. And what does that mean for them? For them not to get scared, because I know I've had to go to homes where some parents wanted me to come in, and I have to actually show the child my face first before I put the mask on. So I usually stand closer towards the door, let them see my face, and I put the mask on, because you know it might look very abstract to them. So that kind of calms the system down. But when they're walking into a store and they're seeing everybody with a mask, now it looks so different. Again, this is a new normal for us. For them, they might not understand. So this is a little story that you can read to them. Social distancing, they might not understand that as well, right? Why do we need that? So the Illinois Autism Partnership, East Seals, has come up with a really nice social story as well, because I think we're going to be doing it for a while. And it'll be good for our kids to understand what's happening and to use it. So you can keep these stories as well with you in the car when you're traveling, and say, you remember this is a social story. So we're not going to run and hug somebody out there. We are going to make sure, like if you're going into supermarket or a shopping mall, there are all these crosses and why only certain number of people can go in, that we're helping our kids understand, again, the new normal, what we're experiencing. This is video modeling. Like I talked about, having classes and why it's very stressful for some of our kids. Video modeling can be used in many different varieties. So usually, and there's a lot of science behind it, this is great for parents to use, because you can take a video of what your kid is doing, chop out the parts that's not appropriate, and so you put together this video clip of all the appropriate behaviors, and you get your child to watch it. For example, if the child needs to go to the bathroom to have a shower, right? So you show them the clip of what they want to do, right? And at the end, they take the towel, they wipe themselves up. That's the only example coming to my mind right now. I was in a school system once where this child would go in and stand on the toilet, and she would splash water all over. And so we used the video modeling for her, where we showed a clip of her walking into the bathroom, turning on the tap, and only the appropriate behaviors. She uses the bathroom, and then she comes out, washes her hand, and she leaves the bathroom. But having that as a nice script, saying this is the appropriate behavior, look what you've done, this is amazing what you've done, and the child actually follows, because our kids love watching themselves, right, in videos. So now using that to our advantage. So video modeling is really great. In this clip, you're also going to see how she tells you about, if you're teaching something, how to kind of zone in on exactly what you're teaching. And even if you're placing items, to place it in a way that it looks like the child is working on the activity. That makes it easier for them to follow through. Right now, I'm providing telehealth screenings that are available. So I offer like a 30-minute free phone call where we can talk, and to just, it's for 30 minutes is when I'll give you like a free discussion we can have whether your child has sensory issues or not. And then following that, we can decide if sensory evaluation and treatment is needed. And so I'm offering that remotely as well. If you want to, you can reach us at Admin Healing Synergy or the number below. I also have a book that I've written for parents, actually designed for parents. So everything that I talked about, I have all that information in there. I'm also offering the Sensory Revolution, which is a 4-module series where we are giving each module, you can pick each module that you want. So again, this is geared towards parents. What is sensory integration? What are the strategies that you can use? Thank you so much for attending this talk. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Dr. Krishnan. Amazing. You had so much information, and thank you for providing the PowerPoint so that we can review it and use all that information at home. It was provided in the chat and will be provided when we post the recording as well. So we did have a couple questions come in. If you have a couple more minutes, we don't have too much time, but if you don't mind, just a couple.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So we have from Hannah, what is the best way to provide a calming break when all the other children are around?
That's a great question. First thing I would think of is headphones because you're canceling off the sounds around, and also the safe space. So if you can have that safe space, like in a corner or in another room, or even a tent, or if you don't have a tent, it's fine. Those forts that you can build, with the cushions, and say, this is his time or her time. Let it go in and have the headphones because sometimes, especially with the other kids, depending what their age is, they're laughing and they're screaming and they're having a good time, but it might be just way too much for this child. So that might be like a nice space, a nice little haven for this child.
Fantastic. Excellent advice. We build forts in my house all the time. Do you have any recommendations for really strong chewies for adults with a really heavy duty?
Yeah, actually, right on target. Yeah. So have some really hardy ones. These are really tough. So you can actually look at for chewies and they will tell you what kind and how hardy the structure is. So don't go for these because I know if you have, even for children who are hard biters, this will be broken in a day.
Right.
But they come with different textures, but you can see something like this for adults.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that the teen?
Yeah, it's a teen chewy bracelet.
Yes. Yeah, those are really heavy duty. And I
Yeah.
think and we have one more question. How do you deal with a meltdown when it is happening and you can't ignore it because of what else is going on in the house?
Yeah, when you have a meltdown, you will have to attend to it. Deep pressure is usually good, but I would definitely tell you to actually move the child away from all the commotions that's taking place. Again, that safe space for the child would be good for you to bring, and then a lot of deep pressure. I usually give a lot of deep pressure on the shoulders if you can. That I don't have it with me, but you have those like stuffed animals which are heavyweight. You can actually pull that around the shoulders and the lap. That actually is very calming, or you can do the burrito wrap. But when the child is having a meltdown, anxiety is kicked in. So if you're doing the burrito wrap, make sure the child is looking at you so that they're seeing you.
Yes.
It's calming.
Amazing. Yeah, we have the weighted worm and we have tons of lap pads.
Right. So that's really calming around the shoulder. And I always tell parents, if you're going out, in public, and then they usually go like, the child's having this meltdown, I go like, put your hands up there. That's calming. But if you know your child already has anxiety or prone to it, have that little the snake or whatever around the shoulder beforehand.
Right. Be prepared. Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderful, amazing information. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us on sensory processing and providing a plethora of resources to use during quarantine, during this time, and in the future. So Dr. Krishnan, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please check out funandfunction.com for all your needs for sensory processing, and continue to join us every Monday through Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Tomorrow we have a visual perspective, or copying and spelling, handwriting, copying, and spelling, a visual perspective with Dr. Robert Letterman. Thank you, Dr. Krishnan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please continue to stay happy and healthy and empower different.
Thank you. Bye-bye.